Test, can you guys hear me tonight? Perfect, thank you. Yeah, it was Kristen.
Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for November 17th, 2020. Item number 1, if we could call the roll, please.
Councilor Brennan.
Here.
Councilor Contreras.
Here.
Councilor Lehman.
Here.
Councilor Whiting will not be attending tonight. Mayor Mars.
Here. Thank you very much. Item number 2, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Moving ahead to item number 3A, 2020 Show Off Shakopee winners. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kristen, are you there?
I am, yes. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This evening, we have the privilege of recognizing our 2020 Show Off Shakopee photo contest winners. This is normally something that we get to do in person, but tonight we're going to do it virtually and recognize some really talented photographers we have in our community. As Michael pulls up the presentation here, we're going to have a chance to see these photos. This is an annual photo contest. It's open to any Shakopee residents who live, work, or attend school in Shakopee. Every year we get dozens of great photos that we use in our marketing and promotion materials, including the Hometown Messenger, and as well as some other, our website and things like that. This year we had 3 categories: nature and landmarks, active living, and fun at parks. Photos were accepted throughout the month of September, and we received more than 80 submissions this year. A volunteer committee of staff helped put together 2 of our grand prize and category winners. And this year we did something new. Our Facebook followers helped us select a People's Choice winner. We had 30 People's Choice finalists that were posted on Facebook, and over the course of about a week, our community helped vote for which one they thought would be the People's Choice winner. So we're going to start with our grand prize winner tonight. This photo was taken by Steve Brock, and it is called O'Dowd Lake Boat Launch. It was taken at O'Dowd Lake, obviously, and Steve told me that he saw a spectacular lightning show in August, and he sort of drove around the community and captured several beautiful photos from that. So this one stood out for us, and you can see Steve there. He receives a $100 cash prize for his grand prize photo. Our second photo, our category winner for active living, was called Swing, and this was taken by Christopher Straub. This was out on near his home, and he just captured the sunlight perfectly, and I think it really shows the feel of Shakopee and how family oriented we are, and how how much of a community it is. This was our Fun at Parks winner. This was taken by Sonia Kelchin. This is called Climbing to New Heights. And this was taken actually at Green Meadows Park. Sonia and Christopher each received $50 as category winners. And this is our People's Choice winner called Frozen Parks. It is actually the Veerling Greenway and Scenic Heights Park on a beautiful frosty morning. This photo was taken by Randy Munnins, who also received a $50 cash prize. These photos will be on display at on the city website and also at various locations through town. So we encourage the community to stop by, or if they're in these locations, to make sure that they stop and check out the photos. We just want to offer a big thank you to all of our photographers who participated. We have some very wonderful, talented photographers in our community, and these photos really showcase, I think, what makes Shakopee so special visually.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I do thank you for putting this together and running this. We've done this for many years. I'm a firm believer these photos every year are bring a lot of wow factor to our community, and the photogs do a great job. It certainly brings out the best of our natural beauty in our community, and congratulations to all the winners. Thank you very much, and even the others that submitted for this contest. We'll do it again, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Councilor Brennan?
Just wanted to mention, I think that they show a really vibrant community, and I think they're all really beautiful and great, capturing the true essence of Shakopee.
Thank you all. Congratulations. If there's no other comments, we will move ahead then to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections, Mr. Reynolds?
Nothing from staff, sir.
Councilor Brennan?
Make a motion to approve agenda for November 17th.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second by Councilor Contreras. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Councilor Brennan.
Aye.
Councilor Contreras.
Aye.
Councilor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving ahead to the consent agenda. Any changes, corrections, Mr. Reynolds?
Nothing from staff, sir.
Councilors? Councilor Lehman?
5A2 and 5B2 removed, please.
Five A2 and what's the other one, Councilor?
5B2.
Okay. Thank you. Any others? Councilor Lehman?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the modified consent agenda. Before we move forward then, without any further discussion, we would read the modified consent agenda into the public record. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor Mars and members of council. These are the consent agenda items for 17 November of 2020. 5A1 approves the city council meeting minutes for 4 November 2020. And 5B1 approves a right-of-way and drainage and utility encroachment agreement for 1631 Norrick Street.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, modified consent agenda, a motion and a second. It's been read into the public record. There would be no further discussion. By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds.
Councilor Brennan.
Aye.
Councilor Contreras.
Aye.
Councilor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. The modified consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. Item number 6, now I'd like to call on any resident that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome on an item not on the agenda. Did we receive any public comment?
No, sir, we have not.
Thank you. Seeing none, then, we would move ahead to item number 7, business removed from consent. Number 5A2, Metro Cities 2021 Draft Legislative Policy. And Councilor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of points. First, there's some good items in these legislative policies. However, there's many items that I disagree with. The other issue, I guess, that I had for many years is I'd really like to see the League of Minnesota Cities and the Metro Cities legislative draft policy positions put out much earlier for the general public to be able to review over a period of time. I've asked for that for, 19 years now. But I pulled it off to vote against it because there's enough in this that I'm opposed to. I don't want to spend 3 hours going through it item by item.
Okay. And have you sent your comments to staff?
Yes, I'm pretty sure staff over the years knows my positions on many things.
All right, Counselor Brennan?
Yep, I sat in two of these committees. I sat in on the Housing and Economic Development Committee, as well as the General Government and Transportation Committee. I tried my best to present the overall general views of Shakopee. And I encourage all council members to do that next year.
Okay, thank you. I know I discussed this with staff a couple times, and they put out some questions about some major changes, and I thought that staff sent us a email the other day laying out actually some the top 5 or 6 policies, and some affect us and some don't. I know these are wide-ranging. Metro Cities represents the local metropolitan area, and Shakopee needs and wants and desires are sometimes different than that of other communities, but Metro Cities is a well-regarded organization and for the most part does very well. But that is fine. Other questions of staff in regard to this? Okay. Counselor
Mayor?
Brennan?
I would like to make a motion to adopt the approval of recommended by Metro Cities Policy Adoption Study Committee and the Metro Cities Board of Directors.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the policies from the Metro Cities draft, and I believe their meeting is coming up here in a week or so,
Yes, sir, it's coming up, I believe it's this Thursday, actually.
this Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I saw that on my calendar. I have a motion and a second. Counselor Contreras?
I second it. Yes, sir.
I have a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Counselor Contreras?
Aye.
Counselor Lehman?
Negative.
Mayor Mars?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to 5B2, the Ridge Creek Park and Rec, or Park and Outlet Channel Improvement Project. Mr. Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. I took this off for a couple of reasons. First reason was we need to discuss if we're going to go with the composite decking or the wood decking. Second is I'm on the fence on this project. I was the last time we discussed it. It's good to see that the price came down. And then the third topic was twofold. I wanted to talk a little bit about why the price is so much lower than what was anticipated and how we arrived at the cost equity between the surface water issues and the park issues.
All right. So maybe we can, staff, just talk about the general overall pricing and from the engineer estimate to the bid, and very, very favorable bid here. And I know where you're going, Councilor Lehman. And then talk about if there's any if the formula for the split between stormwater and parks is going to be adjusted in any way. And then we'll come back and do the wood. Either Steve.
I'll take it.
Yeah, Steve's.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
I can hear you.
All right, good. So first off, we did receive favorable bids. We received surprisingly quite a few bids, and they were very competitive. The first part I'd like to talk about in response would be engineers or architect estimating versus actual costs. In more traditional projects like roadway projects, they're easier for ourselves, myself, to verify. We have a lot of those projects year after year after year. So we're pretty in tune with what contractors bid on those type of projects. This one is unique to me. We don't have too many boardwalk projects. We don't have too many creek realignment projects. So we work with the engineers and the architects, and they provide us their best estimate on the cost, and we work with them on that, and they are the costs that we use. A big project, sometimes we just don't have representative unit rates. In this case, it appears that contractors are hungry. Again, a lot of contractors bidding, competitive bids. So that'd be a factor that also drove down the price. So an atypical project and a competitive project is how I would best explain the difference between the original upfront estimating versus actual costs. To address the other items, cost split between the different funding mechanisms. So there's generally three main items, if you will, and we did talk about them previously when we went out for bidding, and it would be generally the paved trail, the boardwalk, and the creek realignment. So on the bid, there's many different line items, 5 pages of different pay items that we have, and they're very specific to each of those parts of construction. For example, paving the bituminous trail, there's bituminous items, there's aggregate items, there's restoration of turf, there's grading. So they're very specific items that pertain to the trail. For the boardwalk, the same thing. Very specific items to build the boardwalk, the foundations, the wood, etc. So they're very easy to break out between those different works, and then on the other end of it, of where they would be funded from. And then likewise with the creek realignment, we have very specific items for the grading, for the channel excavation, riprap, et cetera, that we're able to very specifically break out and apply to the different groupings. So the appropriate funding is as such as well. So the different funding we have here is there's cost sharing from grants. So we had multiple grants, some from the watershed. They get applied to the stormwater parts of it. Mr. Kursky received a grant from, I think it was the DNR off the top of my head. That funding gets applied to the park component of it. So we have a pretty stringent and robust tracking of all the different pay items and then what the funding applies to. And then maybe I could just comment on the wood decking versus composite. We met at a staff level and we had some long discussions about the benefits, the $165,000 savings for the composite versus the IPI wood. And our recommendation was to go with the wood decking. I would probably preface it of why that wood versus others. The pros for the wood would be it's a very dense, durable wood, long lasting. That's a real pro. And I would say probably the highest component would be the aesthetics of it. The overall vision of our planners, they prefer the natural wood aesthetics of the boardwalk. So I would say they're probably the two most pronounced reasons of why to go with the wood decking. There are some others. There's a whole slew of them. A couple other pros would be so we expect bikes probably will ride on this, maybe skateboards, et cetera, but if there's scratches on the composite wood, if there's graffiti on the composite decking, they're tough for public works to fix, if you will. Graffiti, for example, sometimes it's hard to remove. We might end up flipping the deck board over if it was composite, or we might have a pallet of deck boards where we might need to replace them if there was damage to the boards in one extreme or another. Where if it was wood, not easy to just go out there with the sander and sand this wood. You typically aren't doing that on your home deck either. but as an option, it might lend a little easier for us to remove graffiti and fix any markings or issues, dings, dents, scrapes that we get on the wood. The wood doesn't sound intuitive, but this is a real dense wood, and it basically doesn't burn, if you will. It's pretty fire retardant, so that's a pro compared to the composite decking. I would preface that by, so I'm saying decking, so only the decking is what we're talking about. The structural wood underneath the decking, that will be treated wood. So if we get a cattail fire out there, the structural wood is most likely going to burn, but the decking might not. If it was composite decking, that's probably going to melt. So if we have a fire, on the pros and cons, we did indicate that the IPI wood is somewhat fire retardant, but in the grand scheme of things, we're going to be relying on insurance if we have a fire. Maybe I'll pause there and turn it back to you to discuss.
Okay, thanks. Kind of talking about the bid, and the main question was about the discrepancy between the engineer's estimate and the real bid for the majority of the project. Did that answer that part of the question for you, Councilor Lehman?
Yes.
Okay. Then my questions were, actually, I asked a question that staff about the contingency budget, and our Steve responded to that. It's, it stayed the same at 450, even though the project cost has come down, and the explanation about that it might not get spent, but to have that, I concurred with that on the explanation, so I'm good with the 450. I did have another additional question that I did not ask, was on the legal engineering, administration, and legal expenses, even with the reduced bid. That portion went up by about 160 grand, and if you could comment on that.
Mayor and council members, yes, so original, we had 360,000 for engineering, administration, and legal. At this point, we're looking at $525,000. Looking at our current, what's been expended and what we need to deliver the rest of the project. So why did that grow from 360 to 525,000? The explanation would be, I didn't compute it out, but typically on complex projects, let me start it this way. On our typical road projects, and we deliver them in-house, we're actually deliver engineering, admin, and legal for about 10% of the construction cost. On more complex projects, and this one is actually complex, we have landscape architects, we have bridge culverts, we have the corn crib, we have the boardwalk. The permitting was very exhausting, I would say, with all the permitting that we had to do with the wetland. So this isn't a 10% easy project that we can deliver for 10% of the construction costs. It's actually, when you look at it, it's about 20% plus sometimes. So roughly looking 20% of 3.1 million, that is, I think it's 620,000 if my math is right. So we're in between 15 and 20%. I would say if I were to start over again, we would have estimated higher than 360 to deliver this project. So I wouldn't say that it's oh my gosh, what did we do to expend all these funds on the tail end of it? I would say estimating up front, we didn't give ourselves enough on the estimate. And then I did want to comment on the contingency part. We won't need $450,000, and I'm going to knock on wood. I can't always predict this. Our goal when we go into projects is 0%, is zero contingency. And we work very hard to deliver projects and minimize any additional costs on these projects. Again, this is a difficult project. We could have reduced this to about 10% of the overall construction cost to about $310,000, and I'd be even comfortable at a lesser amount than that. In the grand scheme of things, if we do need to use that contingency amount for amounts greater than $25,000, like for a change order, those change orders will come back to City Council. So as we progress with this project, if we see something out of line and that contingency starts to get too much, I'm going to bring those items back to you. So we will keep you updated as we proceed. So no surprises on this project as we go forward.
Okay. I understand a very complex project too, and if this passes, it started off as a stormwater issue that caused some problems years ago with some flooding and then, a couple times, that Prior Lake outlet channel has to be corrected, and I get that. And then the opportunity to lay a natural passive park on top of it is actually an added bonus, but expensive project. I know that it was a tough vote a couple weeks ago, a month ago, 2 months ago on this, so I get that. Councilor Lehman, outside of the wood, did you get all your questions answered, or did you have more?
I have one more, Mayor. Reading the memo, it talks about being able to use future bonding to reimburse ourselves for this project. That's new to me. What's the plan there?
Mayor and council members, when we identify projects that we might bond for in the future, we add this verbiage to keep our ducks in a row with the project approvals and set the groundwork for potentially using bonding to pay for a portion or a part of this project. Looking at this project, it wasn't and isn't one that we originally identified that we would be potentially proceeding with bonding on. So we included this verbiage here in the memo, but it's actually, the verbiage is not in the resolution. Right now, we're not anticipating that we would bring this project as a bonding type of project to you. The funding for it, it is cost sharing. It is with the stormwater fund, but potentially on the park development end of it, there's about 2.2 million that we could bond for. But I assure you, if that does go the route in the future, that we would make sure that we bring it forward to you with all the required approvals. So I would ask at this time that last paragraph in the memo, it's basically disregarded at this point. Again, this wasn't one of our original projects that we had planned, or not even planned, that I would say more so that we plan to bring forward in the future as part of our bonding mechanism. But if that does change, we will bring the necessary components back to you for consideration.
All right. Thanks, Steve, and certainly we could increase the storm drainage fund aspect funding portion of this as well. No. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to Councilor Lehman's point, I think in the future, you will see that language in projects in the future as we move forward, because we want to keep our options open, especially with the uncertainty of the times we live in currently. So I think that is boilerplate language that I would like to see in most of our agreements moving forward, to give us that option if something happens that we're unanticipating.
And if that were to happen, you would need to come back to council for approval, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That clear. All that does is just, it's basically a notice.
Okay.
But any actual action in regards to bonding or anything like that obviously has to come back for council approval.
Okay. Hopefully those are the bulk of the questions. Any other questions in regard to construction or funding outside of the option of the alternative? And seeing none, then we would move ahead and discuss the wood. versus the IPP, the plastic. And I guess there's certainly a savings here involved, Michael? And we heard a couple bullet points from Steve in regard to both styles.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is the IPE or IPE wood. It's a Brazilian walnut. You can see the variation in colors. This is probably the hardest wood on earth. Has a life expectancy of about 50 years. It really requires no maintenance besides washing it. And as Mr. Lillehog mentioned, it's pretty hard. I think our concern with the plastic is that it, A, looks like plastic, but B, I think they're only willing to give us a 10-year warranty, and the warranty goes down a certain percentage every year. Versus this, we know, I talked to other cities and I talked to a couple of the contractors. This is a very difficult wood to work with, but it's extremely hard and will last a long, long time and will weather to a natural color. And as Mr. Lillehog said, you know, we're going to get damage over time, and of the materials, this is pretty anti-graffiti proof because it's hard. It could be sanded if we had to, could be stained. There's lots of things we could do to it. If someone drops a cigarette on it or does something to it, it will not burn. It has the same fire rating as concrete, so that'll give you an idea how dense this is. These two pieces alone weigh 11 pounds, so that'll give you an idea how dense this wood is.
Councilor Brennan?
I've been on wooden trails and with the bikes, and their tires will wear down grooves on the wood. Do you feel that that's something that this is going to do?
Mayor and Council, the IPE, as Mr. Lillehog mentioned, it's actually stamped on here that it's ironwood. I mean, it's like metal almost. Our experience and some research on the plastic is it will show color degradation and wear on the emboss. You can see the embossing of the actual wood is literally paper thin. That particularly we found when kids ride their scooters on this, the scooter wheels tend to scratch this. And as Mr. Lillehog mentioned, when we had actually the parks maintenance staff, they were in favor of actually doing the wood because there's lots of ways to fix this or it'll age out. There's not a lot of ways to fix this.
Okay.
Other questions in regard to the wood versus the plastic? I guess I was pretty surprised too, that actually the wood was the cheaper alternative, or the plastic was the cheaper alternative. Maybe it's the environment we're in, but I know that when we built the community-built playground in Huber Park, the plastic was an upgrade and more expensive, and it's supposed to be more durable. Interesting that the plastic today, 20 years later, is only giving us a 10-year warranty. So after reviewing this, I would favor the wood, which is more expensive, or we don't save $165, but I would certainly entertain Mr. Lillehog offer to lower the contingency to 320, excuse me, which would save us some money there in the offset.
I concur.
Others comment on the wood versus the plastic? Councilor Contreras?
Mayor, I agree with you. I think we are better off with the wood, and I feel in the long run, even if we spend a little more today, in 10 years or 25 years, we won't be having to replace it and spend more then. So I feel we should be okay with the wood now.
Okay, Councilor Lehman?
That's not just your standard wood that they're talking about. I mean, this stuff is, what they say, 11 pounds sitting there. That's some pretty heavy wood. And with a 50-year life cycle, that's pretty good. So I'm assuming it's water repellent and water sealed and all that and decay resistant. So, 10 years, 50 years, you kind of got to go with the 50-year, I would guess. But I agree with you with the contingency, absolutely.
Okay. Counselor Brennan?
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? I do know that this project has been long and hard. It was very expensive. I feel we got great bids. I think 13 bidders. And, you know, it gets us back to almost where we were in the beginning, almost. And this is much more than just a neighborhood park, obviously. So, Councilor Lehman?
Still don't like the corn crib.
You gotta love your consistency on that, Counselor. But with that, I would entertain a motion. Counselor Lehman?
I'm not making the motion.
Counselor Contreras?
I'll make the motion, Mayor. I'd like to make the motion to adopt Resolution R 2020-135, awarding a contract with the base bid in the amount of $3,166,321.22 to Fratellone Companies for Ridge Creek Park and PLOC Improvement Project PR-19-001.
Okay. Motion on the table.
Second.
Counselor Brennan, second it. Further discussion? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, how do we address in the motion the contingency fee?
So, all right, so for the motion maker and the second, I think what Counselor Lehman is trying to get at is a friendly add amendment for keeping the wood component and lowering the contingency budget from 450 down to 310,000. Motion maker, would that be acceptable to you?
Yes, Mayor. Should I reread it, or are we good with what you said?
And to the second.
Yeah.
Counselor Lehman, I apologize for talking for you, but
That's correct. Was it 310 or 320?
the amendment would include to keep the wood in the budget, the IPE, and lower the contingency budget to 320,000.
320, okay.
So that's going to require the motion maker and seconder to accept that because you originally said 310 and it's 320.
All right,
Okay, Mayor. I accept keeping the wood and lowering the contingency from 350 to 320.
thank you.
I'll make the amendment.
And to the second.
Yeah.
That's acceptable to the second, Counselor Brennan?
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? Any? Counselor Brennan?
I just think this is going to be a great park for our community. And I think the new developments that are coming in the area will really appreciate having this area. So I look forward to it. This has been going on for a couple of years, and I'm glad that the pricing has been, we were able to get the pricing and the bids down. Good work to all the staff for doing that.
You know, if you really pull back and look at the location of this park, kind of on the southern side of our Southbridge development, in that new development off of 16, and then the connectivity with our new ped bridge that will be coming to cross over from the Southbridge area to Quarry Park, and the connectivity all both east and west and north and south. I think this will be a good deal, and I'm excited to see it in the ground and also to fix the stormwater Prior Lake channel problems that we've had some big issues on over the years. So, Councilor Lehman?
Well, it's good to see the price come back down. It was sticker shock the last time we looked at this. And, I feel a little bit better about a 50-year life cycle on the reoccurring maintenance, heavy maintenance on the structure. Hopefully this wood is going to hold up. All for the drainage aspects of this. It's kind of an expensive part side when you're not getting a whole lot. And I certainly don't like the corn crib, but it was a long, hard effort. We've made a lot of progress. There's a lot of good stuff in it. So I guess I will probably support it, not liking the corn crib, even though I grew up on a farm.
Appreciate that, Counselor Lehman. Other comments? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second with a friendly amendment for the wood and lowering the contingency to 320. No further discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Which way do I go? Oh, I suppose.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Motion passes. Appreciate the support, Counselor Lehman. Thank you.
A lot of work on it.
I think we should name that corn crib Matt's Place.
I'll second that.
Thank you all very much, and congratulations to the staff. They worked hard on this. This is coming out of our Park and Rec Master Plan. Thank you, Flataloni, for your very, very competitive bid. We do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to 8A1, 8A2, 8A3, and 8A4. Nate will present, and this will be, we're kind of run through these 4 items all together, but some of them have separate actions. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Nate Reinhardt, Finance Director for the city. Just one minor correction. So I will have a presentation on A1 and then a second presentation that covers A2, A3, A4.
Okay.
So staff is requesting City Council consideration to pay out early our GO Refunding Bond Series 2012A. The city issued General Obligation Improvement Refunding Bonds Series 2012A to refund General Obligation Improvement Bond Series 2004A and GO Improvement Bond Series 2004D. The original bond issues funded improvement projects including West Dean Lake Project, Verleen and County Road 15 East, Valley View Greenfield, and construction of the Public Works Building. The bonds were being funded through special assessments and an annual transfer from the building's internal service fund. The bonds contained a call option for any time after February 1st, 2021. The resolution contemplates calling these bonds on February 1st. By approving that resolution tonight, it provides enough time for us to notify the bondholders that's required within our bond documents. This schedule shows existing maturities following our scheduled February 1st, 2021 payment. If approved, the total payment on February 1st, 2021 would be $2,410,900, which would be our current payment due of $489,150, plus the $1,920,000 of principal outstanding, plus $1,750 in redemption costs. And then this would refund the maturities of February 1st, 2022, 23, 24, and 25. The interest savings would be $98,400, and the total fees of $1,750 would leave us with a net savings of $96,650. This amount is far more than we'd anticipate an investment return with these same balances. The interest rate on the 22 to 25 bond maturities range from 2% to 2.125%. We currently have a cash balance outstanding of approximately $1,575,000 in the debt service fund, which is a result of accumulated special assessments received that was related to these projects. The resolution authorized a transfer of $835,761 from the city's general fund to this debt service fund to provide the additional required sources to fund the payoff. Our preliminary financial projections show that after this transfer, the general fund unassigned fund balance would remain above 50% of the 2021 budgeted expenses. Additionally, this resolution closes the 2012A GO refunding bonds following the payoff and transfers any residual balances, which include about $790,000 in special assessments receivable to the city's capital improvement fund. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 22-133, a resolution providing for the redemption and repayment of the City of Shakopee's General Obligation Improvement Refunding Bond Series 2012A.
Thank you, Nate, for that presentation. Questions of staff? Counselor Lehman.
Which bond is the Public Works building?
It would be the 2004D, but it is both. So the original issue, so it was originally issued in 2004. There was two separate bond issues. One was for these road projects, and the other was for the Public Works building. Those two bonds were refunded in 2012, so it's all part of this one 2012A refunding bond, which we're now proposing to pay off that bond.
I'm trying to break out the remaining 4 or 5 years of the Public Works building fund rent payments for that bond. What's that total cost?
I think we bonded for the Public Works building, and you make a bond and you sell it, and then we wanted to refinance that. And so you enter into a refinance agreement with the bond house. At the same time, we were doing another project, and we just combined it into this refunding project.
Yeah, and as part of our, let me see if I've got, so I think your question might be on, I go back here, oops, the second slide. As far as the annual transfer from building internal service fund, it's typically been $300,000 a year, and that has fluctuated depending on, really what we need in order to pay off that balance.
What's the building rent on the Public Works building per year?
Oh, the internal service charge? I don't have that amount with me right now, so I can look that up.
The building rent on that project has been going toward the bonds for the Public Works building.
Correct.
So what is that amount per year? And there's 5 years remaining, correct?
Yeah, it would be 2000, so we'd have our regular scheduled payment in 2021, and then it would be 22, 23, 24, and 25, so. So it has been we've been doing a $300,000 transfer from the building's internal service fund into the debt service fund to provide the funding for it. I'm not sure what the total rent charges is of the Public Works building. I mean, it would be, above the 300,000, but.
I guess he's asking for a number that we don't have. Both what portion of these bonds is attributed to the Public Works building, and then what portion is the rent that Public Works building pays into the fund.
Well, Mayor, and the reason I ask is because Bob Sweeney and I think it was Bob, we started that back when we built that building, and now I see we want to use, almost $900,000 of general taxpayer levy dollars. And my concern is when we have all this road projects that we assess for, we bond and then we assess, and the assessments with the 5% overage to cover the cost of the bonding is supposed to go back to pay for the bonds. And in this case, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is there's still outlying assessments. We're going to use general tax dollars to fund the bonds for the road improvements. And when we receive these assessments, they're certainly not going to go back to the general taxpayers. It's going to go into the capital improvement fund. And, that's not the whole intention of how we fund road projects and assessments and bonding for them road projects, with the expectation of these dollars are coming back from these assessments.
But the the special assessments that is signed on certain projects, on major reconstruction projects and et cetera, that's a standard policy regardless of how you pay for it. Whether we paid cash for it or any combination of cash or bonding debt, that assessment of 30% is still there, indifferent to how you pay for it. In this case, we use bonds and we refinanced, or for the non-public works part of it, we were using assessments and refunded to save money in 2012. Now there's an opportunity to call that and save a little more money.
Yeah, and I can kind of speak on Councilmember Lehman's question too. So the reason why we're electing to move those remaining special assessments back into the capital improvements fund, so that's where we originally would have had some of these construction projects. So eventually that funding would be used towards future projects similar in nature. Why we chose to elect to propose the transfer from the general fund is we do have available balance within the general fund. So we feel like that would be a source of funds that's available, where we've looked at the cash flows when we've been here for the capital improvement discussion, and we've seen that there is a deficiency in the CIP fund in future years, and that's why we've elected to propose that route.
Councilor Lehman.
5 years ago, when we started this change of how we do our budgets, the purpose was so that we didn't have these excess general levy dollars laying around. And here we have enough excess to use $900,000 into the capital improvement fund or pay off these bonds. So we haven't achieved the original goal of having a tighter control on the actual general levy. And my mind is telling me if you've got excess dollars from the general taxpayers and we're overcharging them, we need to tighten up on our budgeting process so that doesn't happen as much. You're saving $100,000 in this refinancing, but it's costing the taxpayers $900,000 to do it.
I was following along until your last sentence.
You're using $900,000 of general tax levy dollars to pay off these bonds. It's saving $90,000 in interest.
Okay. I don't have a response for that. I know I'm following you along now, but I thought that you were talking about the assessed dollars going back into the capital improvement fund.
Right.
That's the right place for those dollars.
Not all the assessment dollars are in. Okay? There's still assessments out that will be out for years. When them dollars come back in, they're also going to go back into the capital improvement fund, right? Which is where they belong. I get that. The point is that we are replacing the future dollars coming in from the assessments with general taxpayer dollars.
You're more concerned about the general fund transfer.
Well, if we're overcharging the taxpayers, we should give them a refund. That's not going to happen. And 5 years ago, when we started this new budgeting process, the purpose of that was to not have excess general levy dollars. And here we find ourselves with the excess levy dollars again. And now we're putting them into $700,000 in the budget, and now $900,000 to pay this off. So we're putting all this money into the capital improvement fund because we have a deficit in the capital improvement fund because we have a lot of lofty projects, and a big portion of this is at the expense of the taxpayers. And we've got to be cautious of the taxpayers, especially right now.
Okay, I would comment that this bond issue in 2012 was a refunding project that included a new street project that had special assessments. It also had a public works building that I think there was no assessments for property owners except for out of the, paying out of the general fund or something because it was a benefit to the entire community. So it's a little bit difficult to separate that.
Correct, and that's why I asked what the rent on the Public Works building was per year, because that was the original amount that was being transferred over to pay for the bond payments on just a Public Works portion. And
Okay,
it's almost complete.
okay. Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Councilor Lehman's contention that, that we're somehow overcharging the public, the councilor is right in regards to why we started the project 5 years ago to streamline our budget process and also bring some more transparency into what we were doing to ensure that we were not overcharging residents and making sure that as best as we possibly could manage and predict, and I want to leave that word out there, the word predict, you know, we could then dial that budget down to as best we can. Now let's talk about 2020 and our ability to predict. I don't think anyone can predict anything in regards to the current year. So, Councilor Lehman, if you have problems with that, I apologize, but this is not a normal year, and we find ourselves with a budget variance unlike anything we've had since I've been here. Again, if we could have predicted that when we put the budget together in 2019, we'd have a different story today.
I guess I understand where Councilor Lehman's coming from, but I think this was a blended refunding back in 2012. Obviously, when we refunded this in 2012, one of the reasons that we included the Public Works is there must have been some savings to our overall community to lower that interest rate. Now, 5 years before this full redemption occurs, we can save some more money, yes, $98,000. Actually, usually when you do a refunding, most bonds do not have a call feature because the bondholders don't like getting called. They like to earn their money and their interest. Usually it is because of a little higher bond coupon that it's being called. We get to buy these back at par, which is very good rather than a premium on a call feature. So I get what we're doing, and I did ask some questions on it, and I thought our answers were very complete in this, and it lowers our debt and helps our CIP in the long term. But, Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, I don't disagree with Mr. Reynolds. It is a very unique year, but we have to recognize that it's very unique for our businesses and our residents too. There's a lot of uncertainty, not just in government, but in life in general. And, you know, I like to keep the focus on the needs of the people we serve because they're having the same difficulties. Unfortunately, they don't have surpluses like cities, and in our case, we happen to have a surplus. I'm not too sure there's a lot of households or businesses that are sitting on a pile of surplus in this current situation. It is what it is. I've been pretty consistent this year about trying to make sure we do as much as possible for the businesses and citizens in our community. And when I see a surplus of this size, the first thing I ask myself is there a way that we can help those we serve more? Yes, this helps long term, doesn't do anything immediate. And it is what it is.
Thank you. Other comments of staff in regard to this payoff of the 2012A general obligation refunding bonds? Other questions of staff? Seeing none?
Mayor, oh, go ahead, Matt.
Mayor, I was wondering if we could go through the other presentations on the budget and then come back for all these decisions?
This is a separate decision.
Yeah, I think this decision is standalone on some bonds that we have. We have some debt outstanding, and we have the opportunity to call this. The future items are actually based off of a review of our current fiscal review, and then amendments to some budgets, and then a COVID-19 relief fund. And our further item on our budget is actually related to the levy that for 2021.
If our levy for 2021 has gone up since the last time we discussed it, my first action would be to apply some of these excess dollars to lower it. That's why I ask.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Brennan, you had your hand up earlier?
Yeah, I was going to offer a motion.
Oh, all right.
Okay, I make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-133, approving the payoff of 2012A general obligation refunding bonds. And I appreciate what Matt had said. I had those same questions too, but I didn't get quite as where he was going with his questions, but I appreciate the work that Mr. Reinhardt had put together in responding to my questions ahead of time.
Councilor, or Mr. Reynolds.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure everybody understands one of the prime things you look at when you have excess funds is you use one-time funds for one-time expenses. If we were, by the way, the levy has not went up since the last time we made a presentation, so I think that's pretty clear. But if we were to take one-time funds and put them into operations, in other words, which are not one-time expenses, then the next time we came back here, we would have to double that funding stream to be able to make up for what was lost. So the reality is that you can't use one-time funds unless you have a plan in the future to fund it for for anything other than one-time expenses. So this is a one-time expense that saves the taxpayers almost $100,000. So you know, if well, that's it. I'm done.
All right.
Mayor, I seconded it, but I was on mute.
Councilor
Sorry.
Contreras?
Thank you. I did second it, but I was on mute. I apologize.
I have a motion and a second on the table by Councilor Contreras. Further discussion? Further discussion? Further discussion? By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds.
Councilor Brennan.
Aye.
Councilor Contreras.
Aye.
Councilor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Motion passes. Councilor Lehman,
Yes, sir.
I enjoy this discussion. Thank you. Moving ahead then, these next couple presentations will all be presented together. And 8A2, 8A3, 8A4, and Nate will present. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. So tonight I wanted to provide a review of the monthly financial report and then two interrelated items, which would be the amendments to the 2020 budget and the use of coronavirus relief funds. I've included all three items within this presentation, but I'll make sure I stop about halfway through for any questions on the 2020 budget amendments before moving on to the CRF fund discussion, where I'll ask for, I guess in the end, I will be asking for a motion to approve the 2020 budget amendments with a council item A3, 8A3, and then approval of a resolution with 8A4 that would accept a staff memo on the CRF funds and approval of the final CRF expenditure report that we provide to the state. This slide shows the general fund through October. Overall, we're trending positive for the year. At the end of September, it represents 83% of the way through the year. Our revenues were at 77% of budget. Our expenditures were at 80% of budget. Keep in mind that our revenues don't include the second half property tax settlement, which we'll receive in the first week of December. The highlighted areas on the slide are where we are proposing our budget amendments tonight, which will bring them within their allotted budgets, which I'll discuss on the next slide. Just a couple of other revenues to note that will have variances that we're not proposing budget amendments. Those would be for license and permit revenues, which are at 129% as a result of building permit revenues. And on the opposite side, charges for services at 66% as a result of the community center and recreational revenues underperforming due to COVID. So language from our budget policy states the city staff will monitor revenues and expenditures to adhere to their budget amounts. Monthly reports comparing budget with revenues and expenditures will be prepared. Line items within the division may be overspent as long as the total division budgets is not overspent. In the past few years, the City Council has formally adopted a revised current year budget with the adoption of the following year's annual budget. This allowed us to acknowledge where the city was in terms of budget and in one action resolve a large number of variances. This year we are proposing 4 budget amendments for significant variances rather than amend all line items. This may leave several other individual line item variances, both positive and negative, but addresses the major revisions needed to bring the general fund divisions within the budget policy guidelines I just previously spoke on. The city will continue to inform the City Council of budget variances through its monthly financial report to City Council and individual City Council actions such as acceptance of grants, contractual agreements, capital project approvals, so there really should be no surprises. The proposed amendments, the 4 listed here, include number 1, CARES Act relief funds, which would modify revenues for the federal grant, then adjust the expenditure side for the small business grant program, 24/7 fire staffing model, PPE and supplies, building modifications and technology expenses as identified on our CARES expenditure reporting form. And the second amendment is for election-related grants that we received and their related expenses. The third being the allocation of public works staffing. This adjustment doesn't increase spending, but it reallocates budgeted wages from one public works division to another based on where their actual time was coded. And then the last one being for the City Council division, their budgeted expenditures for the final payment and installation of the Reverend Pond statute, which we did not allocate budget for in the original adopted budget. At this point, I wanted to pause for any questions. We will be asking council to make a motion to adopt the budget amendments with the next agenda items. And then the next few slides will cover the coronavirus relief fund section of the presentation.
So this first phase was kind of the monthly overview, was informational only that we do once a month. And then we'll move forward to talk about the amendments that he just ran through. Questions on the monthly overview? Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, he went through the budget amendments. And the biggest one, I think, is the CARES relief funds. When I look at the monthly overview and when I see, intergovernmental up 348%, where does the CARES Act, where do I see that on that chart?
Okay, so it is highlighted there as one of the proposed budget amendments. So that's at 348%. So that would be part of that. That 3.1 million is part of that 3.2 million
Okay.
budget variance.
And how do we, good finance question, I guess, but when our budget shows these dollars being in as revenue, and then we base next year's budget or future budgets off, are we removing them dollars out?
Yeah, we wouldn't account for these one-time items as something that we would automatically anticipate to occur the following year. So each year, we're basing our forecast on, you know, previous experience and what may be happening outside of that, you know, for future market conditions and anything that might be.
Add on, Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, when we do a budget, we don't base the budget solely on the prior year's budget. We look at essentially a 5-year spread, then we also look at our revenue projections, and then that's how we come up with the ultimate budget based upon what is actually needed. And that's the key, what we actually need to run the city. So this particular funding would not be allocated in next year's budget in any way.
Okay. Mayor, you know, in all my years, this COVID thing and the funding is different. It's just not something that I've seen before on this scale. Matter of fact, I don't think anybody has, and it's different. So just trying to track it through.
No, and, you know, I look at the line item of intergovernmental too, and, you know, certainly looking at the budget that we set, and then the influx of those extra dollars, and how that looks, and you go back to baseline budget for 2021, where that 3.2 will not be in there. All right. More questions?
The $599 for special assessments, why is that so drastic?
Yeah, so this is how it's appeared in the past couple of years. So what we've done is we've assessed the costs and we just haven't collected the revenue yet. So it's being shown as a negative right now. If you look at the third column over, the actual column is a negative. It's because we haven't collected.
So them are fairly relatively new projects, I would assume.
So these would be outside your construction projects. So these would be your delinquent bills. So your delinquent garbage primarily, and then any other delinquent fees that would be part of that.
And that would come in December, first part of December, based off the October tax payment.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Is most of the assessments then paid at the end of the year on the second half rather than the first half? Are they split?
For the delinquents, they would be collected primarily in the second half.
On the second half, okay. Other questions? Other questions? If not, continue.
Yeah, I was just going to make one other comment on the special assessment. Sometimes there's a delay too, because we will put what we assessed this year into that negative revenue amount and collect it the following year. So sometimes you'll see it across years as well, even though they're one-year assessments.
Okay.
So moving on to the coronavirus relief funds. As you're aware, the city received $3.1 million. We're responsible for determining the eligible expenses and then maintaining the documentation. That documentation will be subject to a single audit, which is an additional audit that will be completed within the course of our annual audit. We have discussed with our audit firm prior to submitting our final report to ensure that we have the documentation we need. We've also discussed with them the possibility of completing our single audit earlier than usual, and we've volunteered to be their first city that goes through this process. Additionally, we are required to report to the state how much we spend on a monthly basis. That last report was sent November 10th, and that's what we'll be reviewing tonight. We have reached our 3.1 million allocation, so what has been submitted is our final report. However, after speaking to the state, we do have until November 24th if we do want to make any further modifications. We have made some changes since our previously submitted reports. We did remove the recreational revenues. We've determined that the refund of a fee would not be eligible, as it would be considered a revenue impact versus an expenditure impact. We also took out the PPE we purchased for elections, as those likely, or at least have an opportunity to be covered by additional grants. So you can't really collect funds from two different sources. And then we removed the equipment breakdown costs, which was the Zamboni. I know we discussed at a previous council meeting. We previously included hours worked during a modified staffing schedule for police wages. We've added an additional allocation, which was 11% of hours of the hours worked March 1st to October 31st to offset some of these reductions. Oops. Was that on that side? Hopefully it was. Here's what we reported to the state for expenditures from March 1st through October 31st that are eligible for the Coronavirus Relief Fund. I've also included the actual report within the council packet. So we have submitted a total of 3.1 million in eligible expenses, which completes our allocation, including 231,000 for September. The largest portion of costs are related to public safety, which would include police and fire. I won't necessarily go too far in the details because I've included the memo that does that. But qualifying expenditures include personal time being spent to navigate COVID-related issues, teleworking and technology upgrades, PPE, and small business grants. Within the memo, I've added an additional table that shows eligible costs above our allocated amount. This includes expenses incurring after October 31st, but prior to November 15th. It also includes public safety costs above what has been allocated on our reporting form. By adding this additional table to our memo, I think it would justify expenditures if additional funds become available, or if there's anything questioned within our submittal that would need us to justify alternative expenses. We believe there is over another 3 million that would highly likely qualify under the guidelines.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, and just to make sure council knows that we are continuing to track our expenses depending on what will happen in the future. We just want to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row in case something comes down.
For reference, I wanted to just provide a couple of tables of what other cities are doing. Here's a comparison of funds spent through September 30th for MLC cities. Interesting to see that some cities had completed their final report while others had just a small portion of expenditures submitted. But there isn't really much to get from this chart except that we're not necessarily an outlier. We kind of fall in the middle of what other cities are doing. And then this chart shows statewide the categories that were submitted by cities and townships again through September 30th. The three primary expenditure categories that the city of Shakopee reported in order are 1, payroll for public health and safety employees, 2, budgeted personnel and services diverted to a substantially different use, and 3, small business assistance, which are the three top reported categories statewide. So our approach with utilizing funds is very consistent with what we're seeing other cities do as well. And I think I'm on my last slide here. So what we're asking City Council to do is consider a resolution that accepts the staff memo detailing the use of CRF funds and then approve the final CRF expenditure report, which we have submitted in order to make it to the November 10th deadline. However, as I mentioned, we are able to make modifications if needed to by November 24th.
All right. So a couple things mixed in here. 8A3, which is actually the amendments to the 2020 budget, is one action we need to take. And then the second one is the report he just finished, 8A4, which is the CARES Act expenditure report. So with that, Councilor Contreras.
Okay, I'll take the first one. So I'd like to make a motion to approve 2020 budget amendments in accordance with the attached document titled 2020 Proposed Budget Amendments.
Okay. Councilor Lehman?
Second.
So for our budget amendment for the current year, I have a motion and a second by Councilor Lehman. Further discussion? 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 By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds.
Councilor Brennan.
Aye.
Councilor Contreras,
Aye.
Councilor Lehman,
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you. That motion passes for the amendments for the 2020 budget. And then we would move forward to 8A4, the CARES Act expenditure report. Councilor Lehman.
I'll offer resolution R 2020-134, accepting CARES Act funding memo and approving final coronavirus relief fund local government expenditure report as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Brennan. Further discussion? I just want to make a comment to staff that applaud them for their work about tracking this, starting back in, I think we started in June, ahead of the allocation, and keeping track of these dollars and moving forward and justification for that, and even going beyond what is allocated in case there's for some reason, another allocation. I know all cities are doing it, but I know it's extra work on our staff, and I applaud them for that. Thank you. Councilor Contreras.
I think Councilor Lehman was going to say it actually goes back to March 1st, 2020.
You have another question for 2020?
No, I just wanted to say that I think Councilor Lehman was trying to say that it goes back to March 1st, 2020.
Okay,
Right.
March 1st. March 1st. So noted. Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, and I think it's prudent for staff to be tracking these expenses moving forward. And I kind of suspect that the next thing that we're going to see is some kind of a vaccine rollout in the first half of 2021, and that probably coming down toward the counties. And I don't know if the city will be involved in that or not, but time will tell, So it's good. Thanks, staff, for being proactive on this.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So motion on the table and a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Councilor Brennan,
Aye.
Councilor Contreras,
Aye.
Councilor Lehman,
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Excellent. Let's move forward then to 8B1, the Shakopee Fire Department Relief Association bylaw amendment, including a pension benefit increase request. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This actually could have been on consent, but I pulled it off consent, frankly, because I wanted to give council some background on why we're here and kind of what we're doing. First of all, I really want to thank the Fire Relief Association for their willingness to come here and bring this before you at a level that is half of what they rightfully could do under the current policy. And they were very receptive to discussing my concerns with going forward with a full 6%, which they clearly can do under the 2017 policy that council passed. And the reason we put that policy in place back in 2017 was to try to give some stability to this process. As we all know, 2020 has been anything but stable, and we continue to have some concerns about the markets. So I went to the Fire Relief Association and basically asked them if we could submit this to council at a 3% as opposed to a 6%. Again, they have every right to come in and request that 6%, and they agreed to do that. And so I just wanted to give them my personal thanks for working with us on this particular issue. And hopefully there aren't going to be any issues with the stock market in the future, and we're going to continue to move things forward. But again, I continue to have concerns in that area. So I do want you to know that as part of this, I have pledged that next year we will be bringing another 3% back to council. As long as the bottom doesn't fall out, I guess if you'll say. So, and that will bring them up to the 6% that by right they could do tonight. So again, I really want to thank the members of the Relief Association for their willingness to sit down and work through this, and I give them my sincere thanks and really appreciate their willingness to bring this forward at half of what they actually could do.
Thank you. Questions of staff, Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, the one question I had was, it was answered in the memo, but it's not in the resolution, and I just want to understand it completely. So if we have a economic collapse, we won't bring forward a 3% next year? That's our safety gate, if you will?
Well, I think if that was the case, if there was a total collapse, we would certainly be reviewing everything, because then that changes the whole ballgame. I don't expect a total collapse, but again, not really having full comfort in that. You know, the 6% looked a little high. Although by right, and you know, the bottom line is this is their funds that they have invested, and the investments have turned really remarkably good profits. So under the formula in the policy, they have the ability to elect to have a 6% put on to their rate, and like I said before, have agreed for the 3%.
All right. This does not affect direct dollars out of the city of Shakopee?
It does not. The only time would there be an issue is if there is a significant market correction, for lack of a better word.
Right. I've reviewed this policy, and I do like the policy. I don't want to make any changes to it. I think it gives an opportunity for the relief to have increases. There's some protection, obviously, if the pension plan does not do well, the city has to come in. We're not close to that point, which is good news. The meeting I attended, it was all about cooperation and working together and understanding. And tip my hat to the Shakopee Fire Department and Relief Association and ability to talk through this issue in an open format and come to an agreement where we're at today, asking for action. Further questions of staff? Seeing none? Counselor Brennan?
You're on mute, Jody.
Sorry about that. I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-136, approving the amendment of the Shakopee Fire Department and Relief Association bylaws, including a pension benefit increase.
I'll second it.
All right. I have a motion by Counselor Brennan, a second by Counselor Contreras. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Counselor Mars.
Aye.
Excuse me, Mayor Mars.
That's one. Thank you very much. Moving ahead then to 8C1, adoption of the NFPA 70 National Electrical Code for 2020. And Michael will present. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the state, effective today, has adopted the NFPA 70 National Electrical Code 2020, and so we are required to also adopt that, since as of today, it is the rule of law in the state.
Okay. So we're matching what the state does, and I'm looking at the book there, and thanks for making me not read that. I appreciate that. I think standardization is important, and from the state and coming down to all communities, so I think this is a good thing. And do we have any questions of staff? Questions of staff? Counselor Contreras?
No question. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion to approve the resolution R 2020-138, adopting the NFPA 70 National Electric Code 2020 for the city of Shakopee.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Brennan. Thank you. Counselor Lehman.
I did have a question about exterior emergency disconnect on single-family homes and two-family dwellings. I'm going to use my own house as an example. There's a meter on the outside of the house. If they take that meter off, I'm completely disconnected. Is that what this is talking about?
So Mayor and Council, this has been adopted in other states. We're a little behind. So this is particularly in an emergency. So if there's a fire, this allows the fire department to shut off power to the house immediately. So there typically is a box right by the meter that's usually got a wire on it with a seal, and the fire department can snip that and then shut the power off to the house.
So is everybody going to be required to install these?
Mayor and Council, no, this is only for new construction, or for instance, we actually had a house that burned today, which will be completely rebuilt, and so they will be bringing their home up to the new electrical code.
So it's kind of, Mayor, it's kind of like a large outside air conditioner disconnect, but
Mayor,
for the whole house.
Mayor and Council, that's correct.
All right.
Further questions of staff? I have a motion on the table. Motion on the table. Further discussion? 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 By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
All right.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Motion passes. The new state code is accepted. Thank you. Let's move ahead then to 8C2 Canterbury Crossing, Plan Unit Development and Preliminary and Final Plat. And we'll give Michael a minute here and he will present.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor stated, this is the Plan U Development Preliminary and Final Plat for Canterbury Crossing at 1050 Shenyan Street. So this is the site. Canterbury's racetrack is off to the right here, the practice track. This is new Shenandoah Drive right here. This is Shenyan Street, so it's this very large parcel here, which ends currently on a cul-de-sac. So the current owner is Canterbury Development LLC. The current zoning is major rec. The 2040 comp plan shows this as entertainment, which also allows residential uses. The site's 13.29 acres. The proposal is for a senior co-op of 2.2 acres, townhouses on 11.25 acres, public right-of-way of 0.43 acres, and they're proposing open space of 3.87, of which 2.09 is required as part of their PUD zoning. So this is the proposed site plan. So coming off of Shenyan Street, there will be a new city street with a cul-de-sac right here. This is the senior co-op building. There are walk-up units, which the city requested along Shenandoah to provide a more urban experience. And then there are townhouses interior here, and then a second phase along the cul-de-sac. And you can see here there's a playground and fire pit. There is an internal private drive on these units. So the proposed senior co-op is a 56-unit building. 1 bedroom plus den is 10 units. 2 bedroom, 32 units. 2 bedroom plus den is 14 units. Senior co-ops, you actually purchase a share of the corporation that owns the building, and then residents pay a monthly fee for building and site maintenance, amenities, insurance, etc. There is a reduced setback on Shenandoah Drive by 9 feet to promote the more urban feel. Again, it's age restricted. At least one of the residents must be 62 years of age. It's a 4-level high above parking. Exterior materials on that particular building are fiber cement panel, fiber cement board and batten, stone veneer, and timbers. There's 75 stalls of covered parking, 29 surface parking, so they meet the city code. This is the proposed rendering, and as you remember, in a PUD, it's what you see is what you get, so this is what the building will look like. Any major changes, they'll have to come back to the city council for approval.
This is the co-op building?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So this is the co-op building. These are pretty unusual design they have. These are exterior screen porches that they have a system. This particular developer, both of the developers are here tonight. They've been doing this for quite a while, and this is kind of their latest version of the best and greatest. And this will be along Shenandoah. They have a large kind of outdoor gathering space. This whole section down here is kind of an amenities space for the residents. And then this is along the large stormwater pond they have. There'll be a large retaining wall here and landscaping along the backside. And then this is the entrance down into the parking garage. And again, they have underground parking for the units and some duplex spaces here where people that have 2 cars can park them front to back. And then these are the upper floors. So this is the first floor. This is that large outdoor space along Shenandoah, and here is their community space. Then as we go on the upper floors, the building steps back. And then here's their proposed landscaping plan. They did have a pickleball court that's also included in the project, along with some pretty extensive landscaping. The proposed project for the townhomes is being developed by Pulte Developments, 86 2-story row house units, 22 3-story walk-up units. Anticipated purchase price is the high 200s to the high 400s. All these units have 2-car attached garages. There are also 39 guest parking spaces. And there's also 30 on-street spaces along Shenandoah Drive for guests. Front setback minimum of 20 feet to a private drive. There are numerous pedestrian connections throughout the project. The amount of common space exceeds the requirement for a PUD. And this is kind of the site plan. So garages in the rear with patios kind of on the front on these units, and then along Shenandoah, they actually have a front door with their garages in the back. And this shows you how it fits. These 2 developers have worked together to kind of create a cohesive project. You can see the senior project is right in here, and then here's the townhouse project surrounding it. So these are the typical townhouse units. They built a project very similar to this in Chanhassen right off of the highway. It's completely sold out, was very successful. And there's a lot of options on these units. So they're mostly empty nester designs. They have options to add on amenities on the upper floors. You can see in this particular unit, there is a kind of a loft space with an outdoor balcony. And then these would be the units that would be facing Shenandoah. So these are actually street oriented with front doors on the street. And these will be the backs with decks above with garages below. So staff's recommendation is to approve the PUD and preliminary and final plat of Canterbury Crossing. Planning Commission unanimously recommended City Council approval 6-0 on November 5th. And as I said, both of the developers are here to answer questions. There was a lot of questions at the Planning Commission on how a co-op works, and they went through kind of how you own a share, et cetera, and they're happy to answer questions for you.
Excellent. Questions of staff? Just 1 minute.
Yep, hang on, we're trying to get you over there.
Thank you. Councilor Brennan?
I would like to know how a co-op works, but I also would like to know the townhomes, are they senior or is it just the co-op?
Mayor and council, just the taller building is a senior. The other units are market rate, available to anyone who wants to purchase. They do skew a little older in those, and the developers here can talk about their experience nationwide.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lehman?
A couple questions, Mayor. The first one is in the senior co-op, is there an elevator in that building?
Mayor and council, yes.
Okay. And then the site plan looked like it was an overlength cul-de-sac. I didn't see a second access point.
Mayor and council, that's a private drive inside where all the driveways access. They do have another access point in phase 2 on that cul-de-sac on the other end. So they have 2 points of access, one off the city street off of Shinyan, and then one off Howard Drive in the back.
Okay, so the second one just won't be a connection until the second phase is done, correct?
Mayor and council, there'll probably be some sort of temporary gravel or whatever to get people out in an emergency, but it will not be
Okay.
constructed till the second phase.
And then, Mayor, if I follow up,
Yep.
are all the driveways and private drives and stuff then maintained by association or something? It's not, the city's not gonna be plowing these areas or re-blacktopping 20 years from now?
Mayor and council, that's correct. That's why there's cul-de-sacs on both ends. That's where the city street ends. The snowplows turn around there.
Okay, and just a last comment, Mayor, that I kind of wanted to make sure we covered. We've seen in the past where some of these private drives and these developments, after they wear out, the residents want the city to come in and take over the ownership of the roads when they need the repair. How we make sure that that is well documented, that that's not going to be the case on these private drives?
Thank you very much, Counselor Lehman. Staff?
Mayor and council, as part of the plat, that's all platted out as common area for the HOA, and there will be extensive HOA documents that'll be recorded. We haven't seen that in our townhouse projects where we have private drives. There were, I think, some twin or duplex homes that we have where it became an issue, but these are not built to city standards, so you could not get one of our snowplows in here. These are really basically a driveway. We have this at Windermere in their townhouses. We have that, most of the newer townhome projects have this where they're basically their driveways are private.
So when somebody buys one of these, will it be known to them that this is their responsibility as being part of the homeowners association?
Mayor and council, I will ask the representative from Pulte Homes is here, and he'll be happy to address that.
Yeah. We'll have the, just trying to keep it to questions of staff, and there's some overlay here about from the questions of the applicant, but I'm right with you, Counselor Lehman, on this question. So let's, for now, questions of staff. I guess I have a couple. The plat, preliminary and final, is for the whole parcel, and it's one big piece, no outlots. But the staging for it will be the senior co-op right away, and then the townhouses first phase would begin in the spring of 2022, is that correct?
Mayor and council, the way it'll work out is, so the co-op, since it's a share, they have to sell a certain percentage of those shares in advance before they
In the
can-
co-op part?
In the co-op. And then in the townhomes, Pulte plans, there's two phases. The first phase, they plan on doing grading and construction in spring and getting their model units up for fall sales.
Okay. And then I asked a question of staff with our agenda questions and talking about the density here. And naturally, on a standalone, the co-op density would be a little higher, but the total density for the whole plat, co-op and the townhomes, is 12.12 units an acre, is that correct?
Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. Other questions of staff? If not, thank you. And then would the representatives like to come forward and make comment on this proposed preliminary and final PUD plat? Welcome. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Paul Hoyer, Pulte Homes, 7500 Flying Cloud Drive, Suite 670, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, 55344.
Welcome.
Tim Nichols, Lifestyle Communities, 6597 Harbor Beach in Prior Lake, Minnesota. Happy to be here.
Well, welcome to Shakopee.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anything to say before we open to questions? Or you've already heard some of them that are going to come at you here?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to address the Homeowners Association and Private Streets issue.
Yep.
Many cities have a horror story of once upon a time, and typically in the early 1970s, a development was created. They had private streets, and they did not build the streets to the standards that we build city streets. Furthermore, they did not have a budget, and they didn't require at the closing of each home for people to contribute money for this budget for maintaining what they're going to own.
You've heard this before, haven't you?
I've heard it a handful of times, and they're always in that same time period, and it's always the same story. They did not build the streets thick enough. They did not create a budget. They did not have what they call reserves created at the closing of each home. Usually it's 2 months of rent, of dues they pay when they close, and that's what begins the process. They never hired a management company. We are not experts at homeowners associations. We hire management companies to create a budget professionally. So this really is the standard of the industry, which is to have row homes, townhomes, have private streets. There's many reasons for it. It creates more of that urban feel. It gets that density where you create enough homes where they can withstand the costs of maintaining things like retaining walls or, in this case, private streets. So very common in the industry. We've done this long enough that we do it right. I do recognize that in the early 1970s, there were a handful of cases around the Twin Cities where it was not done right. And I mentioned the keys. We handle all those. Furthermore, we have homeowners association documents. They're recorded against each property. And we have disclosure statements. So each home buyer, as they sign their purchase agreement, they have to state that they have read our disclosure statement, which will handle everything from the smell of horses, perhaps in this case, to homeowners association ownership of certain facilities. So we do it right. Most people do it right. It's one of those things where one bad apple gives everything a bad reputation for a long time, and we're still, paying the price for those handful of people in the 70s.
Well, thank you for that. Our community has had those other private streets. You talk about 1970, it's 2020. We've had roads fail shorter of that, 25 years, where it isn't just gonna be an overlay, right? It's gonna be a little reconstruction. Actually, if they didn't build it properly, they would have to do a reconstruction to build the base better.
That's right.
And then not paying for it. Usually typical, an older townhome development that has seniors, and then they get some sticker shock because they didn't plan for that. And what we're trying to get at is we're trying to eliminate that.
I totally understand.
Good. Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, let me frame this just a little bit different for our guest. The folks that are going to be living here are going to be our constituents. And as an elected body, when they have a need, they come to us. And if the maintenance isn't proper, they seek recourse through us. And it's hard on us because we want to represent their best interest. But in this particular case, we're not allowed to. Or we have to put that burden onto everybody else. So it's critical. Two pieces in my mind are very critical. One, I heard our staff say that the roads are not built to the city standard. And the other point that I heard you, sir, was that you're going to communicate these things to your buyers. Both of them are critical pieces. The communication is obviously very critical so that they know what they're getting into long-term and who's responsible and accountable. My question to you is, what standard will these roads be built to since they're not built to the city standard?
Mr. Mayor? Clarification, great question. Mr. Kursky said, we're not building at city standards. I said we are.
Yeah.
We're both right. Let me clarify. The widths of the streets will not meet city standards. Right. The thickness of the streets will meet city standards, and that's what creates the durability.
And the base?
The base, yes.
Yep.
The section of the road will be the same as city standards.
Right. Okay.
Mayor, can I ask, could you give staff a copy down the road of the actual communication piece that you're going to be using for your future residents? that we could just see at some point?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
We'd be happy to do that.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Other questions of the applicant? Both of them here, the representative for the town hall, or the co-op, and then the townhomes. I believe both of you are new to our community.
We are.
Looking, kind of excited to have a new developers in our community. Also choosing the Canterbury area, we're very excited about infill development that we thought Canterbury would build out over the years, but now we're looking at a lot of excitement over in that area. So
We're happy to be here. Very
right.
much so.
Mayor, I did have one more question for the co-op.
Yes.
The elevator, just recently we had some construction at block 3 and 4 building, and one of the upstairs handicap individuals didn't have any options short of crawling down the stairs during that construction phase. Is there any backup systems to this elevator if you have a handicapped person upstairs?
Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, thank you. Tim Nichols. We've had a great history of, I think this will maybe be the 36th or 7th of our co-ops in town. And again, Mr. Mayor, we're pleased to be here. Relative to the elevator topic, our elevators are sized appropriately, are fast moving, we'll have one elevator in the building, and that one elevator does not have, and historically we do not have a backup generator for that. Our buildings, again, we were on 35, 36, 37 of these, principally in the Twin Cities under the Gramercy, Zvago, and Summerhill names. And those buildings have really lasted the test of time, so to speak, relative to the livability. And where we do have people that are, that require the elevator for use, that aren't using the stairs, it's not been of any consequence in an emergency situation. So we have not had any issues. These are buildings we've stayed in contact with, and we have a long-term relationship with, and our credo really is we listen to the buildings, the owners of the buildings that we sell to, the shareholders, and over the course of the last 30 years, we have evolved into a different building type and style and perfected our game, so to speak. But that's one of the things that does remain constant.
Okay. Further questions? I think that my questions, I guess, in reading about the co-op, and you're going to have an elevator, and it's a several story, and understanding that the townhomes are going to be market rate, not age restricted, but wondering if any discussion was talked about to have any one-level townhomes. And usually those are for the seniors, and I understand the townhomes and the co-ops are serving two different markets, and I get that, but
Sure.
One-level townhomes that, I get calls on them for our community, for a more active senior, but doesn't want to do the flight of stairs anymore.
Mr. Mayor, you're right. There is demand for that. This is probably not the perfect location for that. We have found that our empty nesters these days are living healthier longer, and they are making 2 moves from the time the kids leave the home until they move into something more like Tim's place. And we're finding that for our 2-story townhome, we are getting a sizable amount of our buyers are empty nesters, very active adults. 1 flight of stairs seems to be very doable for these folks. So we are seeing that quite a bit with this particular 2-story. The 3-story, less, as you'd imagine. Yes.
Okay. And obviously on this plat to see, there must be a lot of collaboration between your 2 organizations. We're seeing one plat here with 2 different developers developing 2 different products. I find that a little unique and inviting because it creates, it's not all the same continuity of one big project. the confluence of two different projects coming together and melding them together. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. It worked well.
Other questions of the applicants? Questions of the applicants? If not, Counselor Lehman.
Sorry, Mayor, one last question. Is there any type of small tot lot playground for the grandkids visiting the grandparents or anything like that?
Mr. Mayor? Yes, there'll be a fire pit and a tot lot in the row home neighborhood, excuse me.
And they can play pickleball on the pickleball court in the,
Well, we don't have approval for that yet.
right.
Good neighbors.
Crossing the boundaries here, but I did see a little area on each of the developments for the use. But other questions of the applicants? Seeing none, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
How should we proceed?
Mayor, I would like to
Counselor
make,
Brennan?
yeah, I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2020-013, the Canterbury Crossing Planned Unit Development, and resolution number R 2020-137, approving the preliminary and final plat of Canterbury Crossing.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Brennan, a second by Counselor Contreras for approval. Further discussion? Counselor Brennan?
I just think it's going to be a great improvement in the area, and I appreciate the fact that Canterbury is continuing to grow and develop.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, a couple more stakes in the ground on our Canterbury redevelopment, and that really warms me. It's great to see the interest and the build out of that, to drive that. Interesting, again, I always say in the planning world, to have homes and apartments next to a racetrack wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. People want to be close to the action in a nice area, and so very unique. Motion on the table in a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Congratulations. Welcome to our community. Build those roads to high standards. Thank you. Let's move ahead then. So item number 9A in a workshop to getting closer to our budget. There's no action, but we will review our proposed 2021 budget. And Nate, welcome back.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. So tonight we have our final review of the 2021 budget before our public hearing on December 1st. So this is your, I guess your chance to provide any feedback or questions prior to that meeting. A copy of the proposed 2020 budget book in full is available on our website, as well as a copy of tonight's presentation. As mentioned in previous meetings here, our 2021 budget is based on some overlying financial objectives, which include City Council strategic priorities and the direction to remain one of the lowest tax communities in the metro. We have made some adjustments to the 2021 budget since September, which is pretty typical as we get more and more information. I just wanted to have a few, or I just wanted to have one slide on a few of those adjustments we made. One was including the building official training grant, which we received since September, which covers $65,000 in salary to hire and train a building official per year. The annual cost of that position is $94,900, leaving a net impact of $29,900.
We so fast I couldn't get into the goddamn meeting. They made a mistake.
All right.
We have included a revision in the health insurance estimate from 8% to 3%, which is about a $60,000 savings. decreased and made some minor adjustments for some staffing items, such as positions that were open that were filled, and now knowing what cost those new positions were in. Just a small adjustment for that. We've included $135,000 for union negotiations. All 3 contracts are still currently being negotiated. And then we've adjusted the fire service allocation to townships, which provided another $22,000 in revenue. And then lastly, we revised a couple of our revenue projections, increased our building permit revenue estimates close to the 2020 budget levels. As we continue to see activities, and there are potential projects in the pipeline, including further single housing developments. And then we've offset these changes with community center revenues as we've brought those revenues down, as we suspect they'll continue to have to operate with some capacity restrictions. The net impact, though, on the bottom, 0, so no changes from the preliminary levy in total. As we've discussed previously, we've included the fire department staffing model that we implemented as a result of COVID, which provides 24/7 staffing of our fire stations. Again, we have not changed the levy request from what was approved in the preliminary levy in September. Proposed preliminary city levy of $21,017,700, or an increase of 3.13% from last year. And then the proposed EDA levy of $350,000, which is identical to last year. And again, I should mention that EDA authority has up to $936,000, so we still have capacity within that levy for, I guess not this year, but for future years. As previously mentioned, maximum levy the city can set is the preliminary levy, so we're not able to increase it moving forward. On the slide is the 2021 proposed general fund budget. Just highlighted three items that I think summarizes the budget in total. Outside of property tax revenue, non-tax revenue sources increased by $240,000, and that includes the $65,000 building official grant. On the expenditure side, we've held the line as much as possible without impacting service levels, and actually increased them with the additional fire department staffing, as well as the building official. So operationally, we're seeing a net increase of $729,000, which sounds like a big dollar amount, but when you look at operations in total, it's about a 2.5% increase from 2020, with a fourth of that related to the staffing model. The past few years, we've seen a record building permit volume with larger projects. We may see revenues collected one year, but incur inspection costs for the project in the following years. Last year, the City Council formally committed $1.6 million or $1.588 to be used in future years. That include $795,000, the adopted 2020 budget, to offset related operational costs. This budget utilizes $500,000 of those committed reserves for the 2021 budget, so we've reduced that gap by $295,000. Next couple of slides, just to recap significant changes from the 2020 budget to the 2021. There are the two that probably have the most widest range of potential outcomes would be building permit revenue, which we've adjusted to a $54,000 decrease, mainly as a result of economic uncertainty. Recreational revenues, again, we use the 2019 actuals as the baseline when we set these amount. We've adjusted that to a increase of $39,000. Yeah, as mentioned, we used 2019 as the baseline versus 2020. Obviously, there's quite a few unknowns on that. And then, as mentioned, we adjusted the prior year revenues. Oops, might I have a slide? Sorry, those are the three items I just talked about.
Nate, just 1 minute. I apologize. Counselor Lehman, did you have a question just 2 minutes ago? I thought I saw your hand up.
No, I was doing this to hear a little better.
Okay, thank you.
I'll do a better job speaking on the mic too. It's pretty easy to lean back a little bit. So on the expenditure side, nearly 70% of general fund operations are personal costs. Personal costs do include the additional fire department staffing and the new building official. It does not include a cost of living adjustment. For the 3 union contracts set to expire in 2020 that have not settled, as previously mentioned, we are allocating an additional $135,000. In August, the city filled an open human resource specialist position with an admin assistant. As part of that process, we determined the duties of that admin assistant position could be redistributed with current staff. 2021 budget proposes the elimination of that position with some net savings there. We have budgeted 3% for health insurance, and then step increases for existing employees, workers' comp premiums, other small adjustments amount to an additional $349,000 budget allocation for 2021. And then lastly, outside of personnel, we did adjust some contractual cleaning services and some other professional service line items within community center, which resulted in some savings. City's estimated market value at $6.57 billion, increase of $520.7 million or 8.6% from last year. New construction accounts for 22.6% of that increase.
Just a point of note, I think I asked a question earlier of staff a week or so ago about the market value estimated, or the true market value of Shakopee over the last 5 years. And I believe I had a number of $400 million on average. The market value of the city of Shakopee moves up. Is that about a fair number?
I know I provided that to you, but I don't recall off the top of my head. But I do have one number on there that, since 2018, so this would be 3 years, increased by over 1.4 billion. So
1.4, right.
Which is the number on the slide there, but that sounds roughly close to the number I gave you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then this chart compares the city's tax capacity and tax rate over the past 15 years, including the 2021 preliminary levy. You can see the rapid growth in city tax capacity since 2013 on this slide, which the mayor alluded to. The proposed tax levy will drop the tax rate from 33.965% to 31.851%, so a decrease of over 2%. Which is our 4th consecutive year of a tax rate decrease. Tax capacity, so the main thing I showed on this slide is you'll see the shift in residential here, representing 61.4% of the city's tax capacity compared to 63.1%, meaning property owners, homeowners will receive I guess the homeowners will benefit from that the most, as the taxes are shifting towards commercial and apartment properties.
That's good news.
And then the median value home. Out of all the values, 10% of the homes in Shakopee are seeing a no change or a decrease in their home value. 10% are seeing an increase of 10% or more. That remaining 80% are all between 0 and 10% increase. The value of the median value home increased by 6.3% over the past year to $266,800. And this slide kind of shows the comparison since 2016. The 2021 tax impact on that median value home based on the levy is $5 annually.
I think this slide sticks out in my mind, a little different presentation. Nate, thank you for this. So in the last 4 years, or 5 years, your taxes on the average median value home, the tax has gone from $703 to $808, which is about a 14% increase. In the same time period, the average median value home has gone from $204,400 in 2016 now to $266,800, and in 5 years, the value of your home has increased 30%. So the value is certainly way outstripping any tax burden on that. That just, I remember the slide from last year, and it's just compelling to me. Thank you. Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, that's on the median value home, but typically the lower value homes see a higher valuation increase as a percent, which turns out to be a higher tax increase. And then we see the other end, the higher value homes see less of a value increase and therefore less of a tax increase. So unfortunately, the way it's laid out by state law, the lower value homes and usually the lower incomes are hit the hardest. And it's not our doing, I understand that. It's a state statute issue and something we will have to work on.
It'd be great if we could all go to the mill rate, right? Equalize all of this, and more proportionally.
The only state in the United States that doesn't do a mill rate.
Only state, Minnesota.
Only state, Minnesota.
And they make it complicated.
We did in 2001.
All right, thanks, Nate. Continue.
So this is the exciting part where I have new slides in here from the last presentation. So I reached out to comparable cities and asked them what their adopted preliminary levy increase for 2021 is. Of the 11 cities that we consider our comparable cities, Shakopee's 3.13% levy increase was the third lowest, with Maplewood and Coon Rapids being the two cities lower. Obviously, the preliminary levies are subject to change, but that's what was adopted with their preliminary levy. And then here's the same comparison, cities showing the levy change over the past 2 years, plus the preliminary levy increase. Again, Shakopee's very favorable, where the second lowest levy changes over that 3-year period. At around 9% in total, we're much less than what we've seen from many of our counterparts.
I think our 3-year stack reads pretty well.
And then the city operates 2 utilities, sanitary sewer and stormwater. Operations and capital needs of these utilities are funded through user charges. It was our intention this year to keep these changes to these rates as minimal as possible for 2021. And we currently do have healthy balances within these funds. We are proposing no rate changes to the city rates in sewer and stormwater. The Met Council rate will actually decrease for 2021. These rates are allocated to cities based on volume, so even though their charges in total will increase by 2%, because the city's share of total volume is less than it was in their previous allocation rate, it'll decrease. It amounts to about 14 cents per gallon. When I did the calculation on a typical household using 5,000 gallons a month, it was about $8 per year less. So if you are the medium value home and you use 5,000 gallons of water a month, despite the increase in market value in your home, the net cost that you would pay the city would be a slight decrease for 2020. That's when you take in consideration both the city property taxes and the city utility costs.
Send the Met Council a Christmas card. Councilor Matt Lehman?
Mayor, I'm reading this and it says Met Council rate per thousand, $2.60 in 20, $2.74 in 21. So it's an increase of 14 cents, but I'm also hearing this is a decrease.
Yep. So I've no, that's a good catch. I have those numbers transposed. So you're absolutely correct. So it should be 274 and 220 and 260 in 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
And then here's the 2020 cost comparison. So this is current year 2020, as is the information that I have available. So as the cost comparison of comparable and surrounding cities with property taxes, sanitary sewer, and storm charges. This is based on a residential consumer using 5,000 gallons of water a month, and the home valued at $250,000. $250,000 being approximately the median value of home here in Shakopee for 2020. Shakopee is at the very bottom when it compares to our comparison of the annual cost of services. I do anticipate in 2021 we'll fall even further based on the charts on the previous slides, as well as the sewer rate decrease, and then the levy based on the comparison cities being on the low end.
Mr. Reynolds?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to briefly point out, we just had a vote on whether or not the city should take over the Shakopee Public Utilities. And during the course of that, there was all kinds of, I guess I'll just say non-factual information that was thrown out there. And you know what? I'm a facts guy. And I'm looking at this, and I guess it pretty much says everything you need to say. And this city, factually and repeatedly, has been an excellent steward of property taxes and our two utilities, which are sewer and storm. And to all of those who misled the public, good job.
It really shows what's in our control, that we are effective and efficient. And I've seen this slide before. We haven't been the lowest in the past, but we've certainly been near the lowest in the for the 5 years I've been here in regard to the cost of overall service. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, one of the things I'm trying to grasp here is we talk about the median value $250,000 home, roughly a 6% increase in valuation. Do we know what the increase in valuation is on the lower income homes? Has the county put them numbers out yet, and what this impact might be? I think the impact on a $250,000 house was, $5 or something like that. What is it on the lower value homes, and what was their rate of increase? Do we know that?
I'd be happy to put something together for the public hearing to have some more information. I can do any value home. Well, there's plenty of different ways to look at it, is really what it comes down to. So I can pick a value and have it increase at what that typical range would be. I can pick, a percentile. I mean, there's plenty of different ways to look at it, but I can put something together that would be relatively close to what you're looking for. If you're looking for, I don't know, let's say
the $250,000 house too high?
Well, that's the middle. So I want to see what the impact is on the lower value homes. So
Right.
I know that the county usually has some kind of a number saying that this valuation on average went up this much as a percent. The median value homes went up on average 6%, and the higher end homes went up on average, 1.5% or something like that. If you could send that out, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that.
yes, I can follow up with that, and then I can also include it within the
Show a
next
couple of
presentation.
price points.
I certainly can.
I mean, I think I've seen that the lower value homes now are moving up, right? Because those are in demand.
Right.
And so I used to say that we had 54% of our housing stock was at 250 or less in our community. We had a lot of households in that area. With valuations going up in the last several years, that 54%'s probably gone down. But we'll see what Nate comes up. Thank you.
Yeah, last year's presentation, Mayor, had a great example of that, and I was just looking for the same example. Not that I need it now, just it would be just good to have.
Yeah, I'll put it together. It's one of the things that's nice is to compare what you've seen in previous presentations with what it is this year. So
Yeah.
I will put that together. I do have one other comment on the slide. So in the past, we've also, I know when we've put our budget board together and some additional budget information, we've used the median value home for each of these cities. So for example, our comparison with Chaska, we would have grabbed Chaska's median value home and calculated it based on that median value home. In this particular case, I'm doing a flat dollar amount for each one, which is $250,000. So it's a slight change from how we've compared them, at least within the budget board in the past, but I think it makes more sense that you would compare the same value home across each of the community, but just for disclosure.
And that's what other communities do. they have a wide range of housing values, but they always use the average median price home to set their marks at. And
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is, so I'm saying a $250,000 home in Blaine would pay this much, a $250,000 home in Savage would be, I'm not saying the median value home in Savage is a different amount than it is here, and they would pay X amount, so.
you're using the same baseline of a $250,000 house
Which
across the board.
in my opinion, is probably more fundamentally accurate, but
Okay.
it's different than what we've shown in the past.
But we can get to, put together a couple little category numbers for that. Okay,
I will.
great.
Then just a couple more slides. So just kind of, I like to end with, kind of the highlights within the budget. As we mentioned, preliminary levy will reduce the city's tax rate by 2.1%, which is our fourth straight year. Median value home increasing by 6.3%, equates to a 0.6% or a $5 annual increase. So very minimal impact on a typical homeowner. The property tax impact obviously will be different depending on each home value change, but absent any change in value. So if a home did not see any change in value from last year at the median value home, they could expect a tax decrease of $50 or 6%. And then the city continues to see growth just from new construction add to the tax roll. We'd be able to raise the levy by $420,000 or 2.1% without having any impact on existing properties. And then just the calendar timeline moving forward. Property taxes should have been, or have been sent out by the county, so you should have received yours by now. Those are obviously based on the preliminary levy. December 1st, we'll have our public hearing, which will invite public to provide any feedback and comments. And then December 15th, we'll ask for final council approval. So one more time to see this budget presentation.
Great presentation. We have this dialed down pretty good. Coming through with a pretty low levy this year, which is great, given the conditions. I think we're carrying out our city's goals that we have set out in our mission and vision statement. So further questions of staff? Councilmember Lehman.
Well, Mayor, that doesn't mean we don't continue looking for efficiencies and cost savings, correct?
That is correct. Always,
Here and other organizations.
Certainly. So there is no action required tonight on this, just a continued open discussion on it in a workshop. I thank staff for continuing to put this together and machine it, obviously with those, what we're seeing out there, and move forward here. Other comments on the budget? Councilor Brennan?
Nate, on the graph that you showed with the timeline, it said that we needed to approve the utilities. Is that tonight?
No, so that'll be part of the fee schedule, and I know Nate Burkett is putting that something together for that. But I know we haven't talked about it at all, and obviously the utilities budget is a big piece of our budget, so just wanted to kind of reference the rates for, so you know where they were going. But it's not on tonight's agenda.
Okay.
I can double check, maybe I do have it on the schedule for tonight, but it'll be part of the fee schedule in December.
Okay. Follow up?
Yep, I just want to make sure that Mr. Reynolds is taking a look at salary and wages for 2022 and always has that in his mind on how we can get those employees a raise or employees an increase next year, a COLA.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I may, we'll certainly look at the conditions at the time and make the decision based upon the facts as we know them during the budget period.
Yeah.
Councilor Contreras?
It wasn't a question. It was just a quick comment to Mr. Reinhardt and staff. Just thank you for all the hard work. It's a lot of work to put a budget together.
Yeah. Last call for
That's it.
questions, comments? If not, Nate, thank you very much, you and your staff, for the presentation. I do appreciate it. All right. Moving ahead then,
Mayor, there's a question from the city attorney on,
from the city attorney.
yes, on item 8C2. Did we pass both the resolution and the ordinance?
I believe we did.
That's what I thought, but he wanted
The
to make
individual
sure.
read it directly, and I've already emailed the city
Okay.
attorney on it, but the individual read it directly from the memo, so.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We got that clarified?
Yep. That's
Okay.
what I heard I heard the motion maker say both of them,
That's what I
so.
thought. I just
Yep.
want to make sure. Thank you.
All right. Moving ahead, 10A, the city bill list. Before our review, any questions on that? Moving ahead then to 10B, liaison and administration report. Counselor Lehman?
169 Corridor Coalition had a short meeting, topics for the Transportation Alliance fly-in, which was actually a Zoom in. Actually a very good report on that, so I don't know how the state finances are gonna affect transportation, but I guess we'll find out. 12 and 282 on 169 in Jordan. That's a project that's being looked at now, and I will be addressing a group of residents, businesses actually, on the corridor. Our chair is out of state for 2 months, so I'm the vice chair, so I'll be doing that December 2nd, I believe it is. The scale met. I was a little bit late to that meeting, but just a basic overview from my perspective is it seems to be, the topic of the day seems to be a bunch of different communities lobbying for their own wants and desires and needs. And at some point, I'd sure like to get the organization back to how does scale work as a multi-jurisdictional entity together seeking efficiencies. Everybody's a lobbyist now, you know, and we see that from League of Minnesota Cities, Scale. It's everybody, and it's because, you know, I don't have a good answer. I guess everybody wants their 2 cents in the pot trying to get what they want. And, you know, I've always been the type to step back and try to focus on the priorities. I'll continue, I guess.
Yep. Well, I hear you on that, and I'm glad that our community is pretty self-sufficient, and you're seeing it at scale where other communities have wants and needs and desires. At our last council meeting, I reported on a south of the river League of Minnesota Cities mayor and administrative meeting we had here that we hosted, and you know, some of those other communities were asking about LGA moving forward into 2021, and you know, I guess we haven't had LGA, and I'm thankful that we don't. We've built our own community that is self-sufficient, and we don't need that. I don't want to lose it on fiscal disparities either, but if you were a community that got 20% of your budget in LGA, and you're looking at COVID-19 and what's going to happen in 2021, you know, that's not a good thing to be looking at, but
Right.
I hear you on that. Well, thank you for that, Matt. Councilor Lehman, do appreciate it. Councilor Brennan?
Yep, I had spec last night, and it was a long meeting. I think it was 4 hours, which I guess was like the maximum or the record meeting time. We appointed Greg Drent, who's currently the SPU electric supervisor, to act as the interim utilities manager. We had found another interim utilities manager, but he has to leave for medical issues effective December 1st. The commission accepted the findings of a water capacity charge and trunk water charge study. Fees are effective 2021. Trunk water charges will increase 4.75% to $4,662 per net acre. And net acres has been redefined to be consistent with the city's definition regarding ponding. High-density multi-housing water capacity charge will adjust to 0.8 equivalent SAC charges and 0.9 equivalent SAC charges for medium-density townhomes. Decreasing water capacity charges by 8.5% to $5,526 per equivalent SAC units. The commission will be meeting with the council to discuss fees. The majority of the commission feels that communication and transparency is important when making decisions that affect our community. The commission reviewed the preliminary 2021 budget as well as was presented with the independent study of position classification and compensation. And we also watched a presentation on advanced metering infrastructure. And we approved the consultant to start working on that. That's what I have.
That's it. I have a couple questions, or I have a question and a comment. I listened to a part of your meeting yesterday, and it was quite lengthy. I didn't listen to it all, but was there a discussion about shared services, finance and HR?
Yes, there was. There was a motion brought forward to start the search for interim finance director. And the majority of the council feels that we need to take a look at the job description of a finance director because of the offer for shared services with the city. And also any other potential, maybe contracting with an accounting firm or other options that are available. And maybe the best direction is not to get a finance director or a finance director in the capacity that they were previously. So Commissioner Mokel and I were appointed to start researching different options and work with city staff in developing a plan for what that position would be.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. I guess my comment is on an article put out by the State Utility Association, Minnesota Municipal Utility Association, that was published in their newsletter, and I think Mr. Reynolds put it out, and I look at some of these bullet points about how an outside organization, association, looks at public utilities, and, to treat all electrical ratepayers and taxpayers in the city equally, to provide for greater efficiency of municipal utilities through the economies of scale. And that's where I was thinking about this shared service thing and interested in that. And then to provide electric service to residents and users in the city at the terms and conditions subject to the control and regulation of the city. The city owns the utility, and I guess we got, the regulations, terms and conditions, and I know that eventually we're gonna have to double back and come back and try to get a partnership agreement on the pilot. So when I read this twice, and then I really highlighted those couple, he mentioned 5 points, and I pulled out three of them that I think that actually relates to what needs to be done over on Saracen Street, and I hope the commission is moving in that direction. I saw some movement last night on a couple items and look forward to more of that in the future. So that was just my comment.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I had referred to that same article last night when I was speaking, so I think it was pretty interesting when a association is encouraging the utility companies to act in a certain way, and especially when we've been reluctant to do it at the Spuck utility.
Okay. More to come. Thank you very much. Counselor Contreras.
Thank you, Mayor. For the school district, due to the COVID cases rising, students from K to 12 who were on IHD attending school will officially start the distant learning as of November 23rd, 2020 until further notice. And for more information, you can go to shakopee.k12.mn.us. Also for the SDA will be holding an online silent auction and is looking for support. If you're interested in donating or making a theme basket or donating an item or making a theme basket, you can go to their to the SDA website or their Facebook page for more details, and that's shakopeediversity.org. And one last thing, I just wanted to I'm trying to find the right word, just praise, I guess, the work that is still being done through these hard times. The CAP agency and both Esperanza, well, actually it's Esperanza, which is now under the umbrella of the CAP agency. They partner up together and they're still continuing to do the food distributions. It's almost every other day, every day, but it's constant. And I was out there tonight. They did a food drive at the CAP agency and they served over 300 families in less than 1.5 hours. So I know times are getting worse, times are getting hard, but the need, and the need is still there. So just kudos to the organizations that are out there still working really hard. Thank you. That's it.
Very good. I know your SDA online basket actually caught the eye of my wife, so you'll be hearing from her on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving forward to our administration report, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Mars and members of council. I forwarded to everybody right before this meeting. It looks like the governor is going to take some substantive steps to dial back quite a bit of activities starting tomorrow, or at least he'll announce them tomorrow. When we put together even this budget for 2021, the reality is we just don't know. And it looks like I believe the community center will be shut down again. Staff is continuing to try to find ways not only to give our patrons the options that they would like to have being cooped up at home. So we're getting ready to ramp up and talking with Jay Tobin this afternoon, getting ready to ramp up more options for video workouts and things like that. But we're going to continue to face revenue shortfalls there, and they will continue to be significant. So we don't know what the full extent of that will be yet. So just kind of keep that in mind. So essentially what we believe the governor is going to talk about is curbing health clubs, bars, restaurants, youth sports, and social gatherings, all of which not only will impact all of us on a personal level, but obviously city staff. And as I've been keeping all of you abreast, COVID is hitting city staff. And I keep looking at the weather reports and just dreading major snowfall. Because if that occurs, it will stretch our resources more than they've ever been stretched before. And so I would urge the public to have some modicum of understanding if we do have that kind of a significant event. It will not measure up to our normal practices. But we will continue to do everything we can. We had 2 more people test positive today, but we're going to continue to keep this place running and operating and doing the best we can under the circumstances that we've been dealt. It's not all doom and gloom. There are 2 vaccines out there. We're looking forward to being able to get those in the hands of all of us residents and the city staff as well, so we can all move on with our lives. So, but the short term, we've got more grind to do. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, going into winter when you can't really sit outside and have your drink and steak dinner, 30 below zero, these poor bars and restaurants, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard on them. And I keep thinking about what we can do. And, we're pretty limited because it's cold outside, or it's going to get cold outside. But I would, I guess one thing we can do as a community at large is support our small businesses, support our bars and restaurants. Yes, you might have to call in and make a pickup order or a delivery order or whatever. It might be a little bit inconveniencing, but what's more inconvenience is to not have them there long term. So we need to patronize Shakopeans need to patronize Shakopee businesses through this difficult time and follow the rules. It's in our best interest to try to keep these businesses afloat.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a tough time, and we need every resident to do their part, and I think it will get possibly worse before it gets better. But I'm an optimist. I think we'll get through this. We're going to be stronger for it. But I urge everybody to be safe, secure. A mask is not only for yourself, it's for others. And it's a small thing to do for yourself and others, and really be cognizant of what's out there. So, but very well said. Item 11, councilors, is there any other business before this council? Councilor Lehman?
Happy Thanksgiving to staff and council and all of our residents and businesses.
Thank you. I would like to say happy anniversary to my wife. I'm sorry I'm not there with you. I'm helping run the city here. But happy Thanksgiving to all of our residents and city staff. Please be safe. Please be secure. And those are my comments. And with that,
take her the keys to a plow truck.
Oh my gosh.
Councilor Brennan?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, December 1st, 2020 at 7 o'clock.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Councilor Brennan.
Aye.
Councilor Contreras.
Aye.
Councilor Lehman.
Aye.
And Mayor Mars.
Aye. This city council meeting for November 17, 2020 is adjourned at 9:44.
Thanks, everybody.